Have you ever looked at a phone screen and realized your entire life had been built on a lie? Because that's exactly what happened to me. Not with a dramatic confession, not with a late-night phone call, just one text message on an ordinary Tuesday morning. The smell of fresh coffee filled the kitchen as I reached for 2 mugs. Upstairs, my wife Sarah was getting ready for work, humming her favorite song like every other morning. Everything felt normal, at least until her phone buzzed. She'd left it on the kitchen island while rushing upstairs. I wasn't the kind of husband who checked my wife's phone. After 8 years of marriage, trust had never been something we questioned, but the screen lit up before I could look away. A message from her best friend, Mia. Need a date tonight. Is your husband available? I actually laughed. Classic Mia, I thought. She always had a sarcastic sense of humor. Then another notification appeared. Only 4 words. Ask your best friend. My smile disappeared. I never sent that message. I picked up the phone, staring at the screen, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Before I could process it, Sarah walked into the kitchen. She froze for half a second when she saw her phone in my hand. It was barely noticeable, but it was there. You okay? She asked, forcing a smile. Yeah, I replied, handing it back. Just saw Mia's message. For a split second, the color drained from her face. Then she laughed. Oh, she's ridiculous. Maybe she was. Or maybe that tiny reaction had just answered a question I hadn't even asked yet. Sarah kissed my cheek, grabbed her keys, and headed for the door. Love you, she called out. Love you too. The words came out automatically. But for the first time in 8 years, I wasn't sure I believed them. As her car disappeared down the street, I stood alone in the silent kitchen, replaying those 4 words over and over in my head. Something wasn't right. And deep down, I knew this story wasn't about one strange text message. It was about a secret that had been hiding in plain sight. That evening, I noticed 3 small details I'd ignored for months. Individually, they meant nothing. Together, they would change everything. Looking back, the text message wasn't the real warning. It was just the first crack. The real story had been unfolding for months. I just hadn't been paying attention. That evening, Sarah came home right on time. She smiled, dropped her purse by the door, and asked the same question she always did. How was your day? Pretty normal, I replied. She nodded, but something about her felt different. Not distant. Careful. Like someone making sure every move looked natural. While we ate dinner, I noticed the first thing. Her phone never left her hand. For years, she'd toss it on the table without a second thought. Now, every time it buzzed, she'd glance at the screen before turning it face down. She never opened a single message in front of me. At first, I told myself I was overthinking. Until I noticed the second thing. She'd started wearing perfume to work. Not just a little. The expensive one I bought her on our anniversary. The one she'd always said was too nice for weekdays. Now it had become part of her daily routine. Then came the third detail. After dinner, she disappeared into the bedroom to answer a work call. 20 minutes passed, then 30. When she finally came back, she looked unusually cheerful. Everything okay? I asked. She smiled. Yeah, just a project that's finally coming together. I smiled back. I'm glad. But something didn't add up. Sarah hated taking work calls at home. She always complained that home was supposed to be her escape. So why had that suddenly changed? Over the next few days, I stopped asking questions. Instead, I started observing. She left for work earlier than usual, came home later, started locking her phone. Even her morning routine changed. Small things, tiny things, the kind most people would never notice. But once your instincts wake up, every detail feels louder. Then Friday arrived. I've got a team dinner tonight, Sarah said while putting on her coat. Probably won't be home until late. No problem, I replied. Have fun. About an hour later, I was grabbing takeout when I ran into one of Sarah's coworkers. After a few minutes of small talk, he smiled and said, Tell Sarah we'll see her Monday. Lucky she skipped tonight's dinner. I felt my heart sink. I forced a laugh. Yeah, I'll tell her. But inside, one question echoed louder than anything else. If she wasn't at the team dinner, then where was she? That night, I wasn't planning to follow her. But one unexpected phone call changed my mind. That night, I sat in my car for nearly 10 minutes. The engine was off. The restaurant where Sarah claimed her team was having dinner was only a few blocks away. Part of me wanted to drive home and pretend none of this was happening. The other part needed the truth, so I went. The parking lot was packed. I scanned every row. Sarah's car wasn't there. Maybe she parked somewhere else. Maybe she'd arrived early. I walked inside anyway. The hostess smiled. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for a corporate dinner. Thompson Technologies." She checked the reservation list, then looked back at me. "I'm sorry, sir. We don't have any reservation under that name tonight." I thanked her and walked out. No anger, no panic, just silence. Because in that moment, one thing became painfully clear. Sarah hadn't lied about where she was. She'd lied about everything. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. It was Sarah. "Hey," she said cheerfully. "Dinner's running late. Don't wait up." I glanced at the empty road ahead. "Take your time. I love you." There was a brief pause. "Love you too." The call ended. For the first time, those 3 words sounded rehearsed, like lines from a script she'd repeated too many times. The next morning, I did something I'd never imagined doing. I opened our shared bank account, not because I was suspicious of money, but because numbers don't lie. Most transactions looked normal. Groceries, gas, utilities. Then one charge caught my attention. A boutique hotel across town. Not a huge amount, just enough to book a room for one evening. The payment date? Last Friday. The same Friday Sarah said she'd stayed late at the office. I clicked on the receipt. 2 guests, not one. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was a pattern. And patterns tell stories that excuses never can. I still didn't confront her. Not yet. Because I wasn't interested in winning an argument. I wanted the whole truth. And I had a feeling someone was about to hand it to me without even realizing it. The following afternoon, Sarah's best friend sent a message. She thought she was texting Sarah. Instead, it landed on my phone. I didn't have to wait long. The very next afternoon, my phone vibrated while I was in the middle of a meeting. It was a text from Mia. For a second, I just stared at her name. She had never messaged me directly before. I opened it. "Same place tonight?" He said he'll be there around 7. That was it. No greeting, no explanation. Just one careless message. A few seconds later, another notification popped up. "OMG, wrong chat. Ignore that." I smiled. Not because it was funny, because people only panic when they realize they've made a mistake. I didn't reply. Instead, I locked my phone and slipped it back into my pocket. If Mia thought I believed her excuse, she'd keep making mistakes. And mistakes leave evidence. That evening, Sarah came home looking unusually nervous. She barely touched her dinner. Every few minutes, she'd glance at her phone, type a quick reply, then lock the screen again. Finally, I broke the silence. "Everything okay?" She looked up too quickly. "Yeah, why?" "You just seem distracted." She forced a laugh. "It's work. Deadlines." I nodded. "Got it." The conversation ended there, but something had changed. For the first time, she wasn't just hiding something. She was worried, and worried people become careless. 2 days later, another surprise landed in my inbox. A notification from our bank. Someone had tried to use our joint credit card at an upscale restaurant downtown. The transaction had been declined. Not because there wasn't enough money, because the bank flagged it as unusual activity and asked me to approve it. I didn't. Instead, I checked the time. 7:18 p.m., exactly when Sarah had texted me saying she was working late. A minute later, my phone buzzed again. Her message, "Meeting's running longer than expected. I'll be home around 10. I stared at the screen. Then at the bank notification. One of them was telling the truth. The other wasn't. That night, Sarah walked through the front door just before 10. She looked exhausted. Or maybe she was exhausted from pretending. She smiled. "You still awake? I was waiting for you." She walked over and kissed my forehead. "I'm lucky to have you." I looked into her eyes. For a brief second, I wondered if she actually believed those words, or if she'd simply gotten used to saying them. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had faded. What replaced it was something far more dangerous. Clarity. The kind that makes difficult decisions surprisingly easy. The next morning, I made a phone call. Not to Sarah, not to Mia, to a divorce attorney. Because I finally understood something. This marriage wasn't falling apart because of one affair. It had been falling apart, one lie at a time. I thought hiring a lawyer would be the hardest part. I was wrong. The hardest moment came 3 days later, when Sarah looked me in the eyes and asked a question she never should have asked. 3 days after meeting with the attorney, Sarah walked into the kitchen carrying 2 cups of coffee. She placed one in front of me and smiled. "You've been quiet lately." I looked up from my laptop. "Have I?" She nodded. "You're different." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she asked the question that caught me completely off guard. "Are you hiding something from me?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the irony was unbelievable. I took a sip of coffee and calmly answered, "No." She studied my face, searching for something. A crack, a clue, anything. When she found nothing, she looked away. "I guess I'm just overthinking." "Maybe," I said, but deep down, I knew she was beginning to feel exactly what I'd felt for weeks. Uncertainty. That weekend, everything started falling apart. Not because I confronted her, because the lies were becoming too difficult to manage. Saturday afternoon, Mia accidentally uploaded a short video to social media. It lasted less than 15 seconds. Friends laughing, music playing, city lights in the background. Nothing unusual. Until I noticed Sarah in the corner of the frame. She wasn't with coworkers. She wasn't at a business event. She was sitting beside the same man, his hand resting comfortably over hers. No hiding, no pretending. Just the truth, captured by someone's careless mistake. The video disappeared a few minutes later, but not before I saved it. Sometimes, the strongest evidence isn't something you search for. It's something people hand you themselves. That evening, Sarah came home looking unusually tense. She barely said a word during dinner. Halfway through the meal, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. The color drained from her face. "Everything okay?" I asked. She quickly locked the phone. "Yeah, just Mia." I nodded. I figured. For the first time, she looked genuinely frightened. Not because she'd been caught, because she realized she could be. The next morning, I received a call from my attorney. "I've reviewed everything," he said. "You have more than enough documentation." He paused before adding, "Now the decision isn't legal. It's personal." I thanked him, ended the call, and looked at the envelope sitting on my desk. Inside were the divorce papers. Signed. Ready. All I had to do was place them in Sarah's hands. The following morning, I made her favorite breakfast. She thought we were about to rebuild our marriage. She had no idea. It was actually our goodbye. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, not because I couldn't sleep, because I already knew how the day would end. I made Sarah's favorite breakfast: blueberry pancakes, fresh coffee, orange juice. It looked just like any other Sunday morning. She walked into the kitchen, smiled, and laughed. "Wow, what's all this?" I figured we deserved a nice breakfast. She wrapped her arms around me. For a second, I thought I'd forgotten our anniversary. I smiled. "No, nothing like that. If only she knew." We ate in silence for a few minutes. Not the awkward kind, the peaceful kind. The kind that comes when one person has already made peace with a difficult decision. As she reached for her coffee, I slid a plain white envelope across the table. She looked at it. "What's this? Open it." Her smile faded. Slowly, she pulled out the papers. She read the first page, then the second. By the third, her hands started shaking. "No," she whispered. "No, you can't be serious. I am." Tears filled her eyes. "When did you decide this?" I looked at her calmly. "The day I realized I was the only one still fighting for this marriage." She stared at me. "So, you know?" "I know enough." She buried her face in her hands. "I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far." I nodded. "I believe you." She looked up, surprised. "You do?" "Yes, I believe you never planned to lose everything. But every lie made that outcome more likely." The room fell silent again. This time, There was nothing left to explain. A week later, we met one last time to sign the final paperwork. No shouting. No insults. Just two people accepting that the life they built together had reached its end. As we walked toward the parking lot, Sarah stopped beside her car. "I wish I could go back," she said quietly. I looked at her for a moment. So do I, but not to change the ending. To remember the version of us that was actually happy. She nodded. Neither of us said another word. Sometimes, silence is the most honest conversation two people can have. Months passed. Life slowly found a new rhythm. I started traveling again, spent more time with family, reconnected with old friends. The house that once felt heavy finally felt like home again. One evening, while cleaning out an old drawer, I found a photo from our first road trip together. For a moment, I smiled, not because I wanted the past back, but because I realized something important. You don't have to hate someone to let them go. Sometimes people become chapters, not because they were meaningless, but because their story with you has simply reached its final page. I folded the photo, placed it back in the box, and closed the drawer. Then I stepped outside. The air felt lighter than it had in months. For the first time since that text message appeared on a quiet Tuesday morning, I wasn't thinking about betrayal. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't even thinking about Sarah. I was thinking about the future. And that's when I knew. I hadn't just moved on. I'd finally moved forward. Sometimes the strongest person in the room isn't the one who gets even. It's the one who walks away with their self-respect still intact. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Until next time, take care of your heart. Because trust takes years to build, but only one moment to break.